Next day despair. The night air was heavy with rain when I pulled into the depot, the lights above flickering intermittently as I killed the engine. My shift was supposed to be done, another long day of deliveries, and I was ready to clock out, grab something greasy, and head home. The van smelled of fast food wrappers, stale coffee, and damp clothes. But as I stepped out, I saw Dale leaning against the wall by the door, his face tense and strained, his eyes darting nervously. Dale never looked like that. He was always a gruff guy, but not jumpy. "You got something else for me?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Yeah," he said, handing me a clipboard without looking me in the eye. "Priority job. It's urgent." I glanced down at the paper. The address wasn't an address. It was a set of coordinates, just numbers and a location pin on the map. The instructions beneath were brief. Deliver immediately. No delays. The only other note was a single word, written in frantic red ink. Urgent. I raised an eyebrow, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. Coordinates? "Where is this?" I asked. He shrugged. "Doesn't matter. It's not for me to know." His voice was tight, clipped, as if he was trying to rush through this conversation. "Just get it done. I'll take care of the paperwork later." I could have argued. I could have said I was done for the night, but something about the way he was acting made me hesitate. I glanced over at the counter. The package sat there, small, unassuming. It looked wrong, though. The paper was old, the string tying it together unnaturally neat, like it had been done by hand with precision. No logos, no labels, just that faint, strange spiral pressed into the surface, almost like a brand. The air in the room felt warmer now, or maybe it was just me. I took the clipboard, signed the acknowledgement, and grabbed the package. As I turned to leave, I noticed Dale watching me closely, his jaw tight. He didn't say a word, but I felt the weight of his gaze. Outside, the rain had worsened. The wind howled, carrying the scent of wet pavement and damp trees. I climbed into the van and tossed the package onto the passenger seat. The rain beat against the windshield, the wipers struggling to keep up with the downpour as I pulled away. The night felt suffocating. The road ahead, a dark, wet tunnel. I hit the gas, and the GPS on the dashboard blinked to life, guiding me toward the coordinates. The numbers pulsed on the screen, directing me further away from the city, into roads I didn't recognize. As the miles stretched on, I couldn't shake the unease that had settled in my chest. The package sat there, still and quiet, but it was as though it was waiting for something, its presence growing heavier with each passing mile. The radio was quiet, only faint static filling the silence, but the closer I got to the destination, the more I could hear something. A low hum. I glanced at the passenger seat. The package hadn't moved, but I was certain it was vibrating faintly, almost imperceptibly. It was almost as if the hum was coming from the inside, resonating in time with the rhythm of the van's engine. "Come on," I muttered to myself, gripping the wheel tighter as I sped past the dark outline of trees on either side. "It's just a delivery." But the hum didn't stop. It only grew louder, like a pulse, something alive beneath the surface, waiting. And as I turned the corner, the road ahead swallowed everything. The city lights were gone, and the world around me felt vast, empty. The GPS screen flickered. I looked up. The road ahead disappeared into the dark, and at the end of the curve, barely visible through the mist, stood a stone arch, crumbling, ancient, its surface etched with markings I didn't understand. It wasn't an address, Not even a town. Just an arch, standing alone in the middle of nowhere. The package's hum reached its peak, vibrating through the van, its pulse in sync with the growing rhythm in my chest. Something deep inside told me I wasn't supposed to be here. I killed the engine and stepped out of the van, the weight of the package pressing heavily against me. The rain slashed against my face, cold and biting. I walked toward the arch, each step heavier than the last, my mind screaming at me to turn back, to leave this strange place and never look back. But my legs carried me forward. I placed the package on the ground at the base of the arch. The markings on the stone shimmered, their strange shapes twisting beneath the rain as if they were alive. The package hummed louder now. It wasn't the van or the engine, but something else. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't move. The rain faded as I stepped closer to the arch, the sound muffled, as if the air had thickened into something heavier. The package on the ground pulsed faintly, its vibrations so subtle I could feel them in my chest more than I could hear them. The markings on the stone shifted in the faint light, their twisting patterns just outside the grasp of understanding. I didn't want to touch it again. The hum coming from the package had grown stronger, deeper, resonating with the kind of power that didn't belong to anything man-made. But leaving it there, under the open sky, didn't feel right either. The longer I stared at the arch, the more it seemed to lean toward me, though I knew it wasn't moving. My breath caught as the symbol shimmered, glowing faintly, drawing my eyes into their shifting shapes. My heart hammered against my ribs, syncing with the pulsing of the package. I wasn't thinking anymore, just acting, as if something was tugging at me from deep inside. I picked up the package. It was warmer now, almost hot, and the hum spread through my arms as I held it. The arch loomed over me, its jagged edges sharp against the black sky. The markings glowed brighter, their twisted patterns curling inward toward the center, forming something like a doorway cut from the fabric of the night. The air shifted, sharp and cold. I hesitated at the threshold. Behind me, the van sat in the rain, headlights dim, the engine silent. I could turn back. I could drop the package, walk away, and pretend this never happened. But I knew, deep down, in some unspoken part of me, that I wouldn't make it far. The mark on my chest flared, a searing heat that pulled me forward, through the arch. On the other side, the world was different. The rain was gone. The air was dense, thick with a humidity that clung to my skin and made it hard to breathe. The ground beneath my boots was soft, pliant, like wet moss, but darker, black as ink, with faint patterns rippling beneath the surface. I looked up, expecting the sky, but there was only a vast emptiness stretching endlessly above me, pinpricked with faint shifting lights that moved in impossible directions. The arch was gone. No stone, no markings, no hint of the world I'd left behind. Just a wide, featureless expanse stretching in all directions, except for one thing. In the distance, a monolithic structure rose from the ground, its jagged edges cutting into the void above. It was impossibly tall, its surface smooth and black, marked with glowing veins of light that pulsed faintly, matching the rhythm in my chest. It shouldn't have been visible in the dark, but it was, standing out with a clarity that made my stomach twist. The package in my hands grew heavier, its heat intensifying. The hum was louder now, filling the silence around me with a low, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through the very air. It wasn't just the package anymore. The hum was coming from the monolith, the veins on its surface pulsing in sync with the sound. The mark on my chest burned brighter, the heat radiating through me. My legs moved before I realized what was happening. The package pulling me forward, step by step, toward the distant structure. The ground shifted beneath my boots, soft and uneven, but I couldn't stop myself. The whispers began as I walked. They were faint at first, just a murmur at the edge of hearing, but they grew louder with every step. Overlapping voices, too many to count, speaking in a language I didn't understand. They rose and fell in a rhythm that matched the hum, their tone neither welcoming nor hostile, just inevitable. I didn't realize how close I'd gotten until the monolith towered over me, its surface alive with movement. The veins of light twisted and coiled, forming patterns that my eyes couldn't follow. My knees buckled, and I fell to the ground, the package slipping from my hands. The whispers converged into a single voice, deep, resonant, and all-encompassing. "Place it." The package pulsed violently, its light flaring brighter, the heat rolling off it in waves. My hands moved on their own, reaching for it, lifting it off the ground. My vision blurred as the voice filled my mind, erasing every thought, every shred of willpower. I stepped forward, the monolith's surface glowing brighter. A fissure split down the center, jagged and uneven, revealing an empty void within. The hum became deafening, the mark on my chest burning hotter than I thought possible. I placed the package at the base of the monolith. The fissure widened, swallowing the package whole. The light from the veins burst outward, illuminating the void around me, and the whispers rose into a chaotic symphony that pierced through me, pulling me into the ground. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was the monolith, its veins flaring with impossible brilliance as if it were alive. The moment the package disappeared into the monolith, the ground beneath me trembled. The soft, pliant earth hardened, its surface shifting like living stone. I stumbled back, the heat from the mark on my chest pulsing through my body, syncing with the vibrations in the air. The monolith flared brighter, its veins of light twisting and coiling like rivers of molten energy. The fissure widened, spilling a pale, sickly glow into the void around it. The light wasn't natural. It didn't illuminate so much as it revealed. Shapes danced in its glow, vast and incomprehensible, shifting in and out of view, like reflections on rippling water. And then the hum returned. It wasn't the low, rhythmic sound from before. It was louder, deeper, vibrating through the air and into my bones. It was alive, a presence pressing against me, filling the space with an unrelenting weight. My chest burned, the mark flaring with searing intensity, and I collapsed to my knees. The whispers returned, louder this time, their chaotic symphony merging into something resembling a chant. The words weren't clear, but the intent was. The offering had been accepted. The monolith shifted. The fissure at its center rippled, its jagged edges curling inward as if it were breathing. The light inside grew brighter, its pulsing rhythm quickening, and I felt the pull again, stronger this time, dragging at every fiber of my being. I tried to stand, to move, to run, but my body refused to respond. The pull wasn't physical. It was deeper, something that reached into my thoughts, my memories, my very essence. I felt it tearing at me, unraveling pieces of who I was, replacing them with something vast and unrecognizable. The fissure widened further, and the light from within spilled onto the ground, forming jagged lines that stretched toward me like roots. The whispers grew louder, the chant rising into a crescendo, and the shapes in the light became clearer. Vast, towering figures with edges that dissolved into shadow, their forms impossible to hold in my vision. They moved with purpose. purpose, converging on the monolith, their presence overwhelming. And then I heard it. Not the whispers, not the hum, the voice. The chain begins. The link is forged. It was inside me. A thought planted directly into my mind, bypassing sound entirely. The words resonated through every part of me, filling the cracks left by whatever had been torn away. I gasped, my chest heaving, as the light from the monolith surged forward, enveloping me. The ground cracked beneath me, jagged fissures spreading outward from the monolith, glowing with the same unnatural light. The shapes in the glow moved closer, their forms shifting and fracturing as they reached the edge of the fissures. They didn't cross them. They didn't have to. The pull in my chest intensified, the mark burning so brightly I thought it might tear through my skin. The monolith's hum became a roar, its light exploding outward, and for a brief moment, I saw everything. The chain. It stretched into infinity, its glowing links connecting worlds, dimensions, entities. Each link pulsed with light, a rhythm that matched my mark. I saw others, countless others, standing at their own monoliths, their faces blank, their bodies rigid as the light consumed them. Some were human, others were not. Each one was tied to the chain, their fates entwined, their existence reduced to a single purpose. And then I was pulled back. The light vanished, the monolith dimming until its veins were no more than faint, glowing scars. The fissure snapped shut, and the shapes in the glow retreated, dissolving into the void. The whispers faded, leaving only the low hum of the monolith, steady and unyielding. I collapsed to the ground, my chest heaving, the mark's heat fading into a dull, persistent ache. The void around me was silent now, empty except for the towering monolith. The package was gone, its purpose fulfilled. But I wasn't free. The pull remained, weaker now but still present, drawing me forward, deeper into the void. My legs trembled as I forced myself to stand, my mind reeling from what I'd seen, the chain, the links, the others. I wasn't the first. I wouldn't be the last. The monolith pulsed faintly, its rhythm syncing with the mark on my chest. The chain had been forged. The cycle had begun, and I was just one link. The air was still, heavy with the lingering hum of the monolith behind me. The light from its veins had faded, leaving only faint scars etched into its surface. But the mark on my chest still burned, a steady throb that matched the rhythm of the chain I'd seen in that brief, terrifying vision. I stumbled forward, the ground beneath my boots soft and unsteady, shifting like wet sand. The void around me stretched endlessly, its oppressive silence broken only by the faint echo of the monolith's hum. Each step felt like it took more effort than the last, as though the void itself was resisting my movement. The pull in my chest grew stronger, sharper. It wasn't a physical force, it was deeper, rooted in something beyond my body. It pulled at my thoughts, my memories, unraveling them into fragmented images that dissolved as quickly as they formed. My mother's face, a familiar street, the smell of coffee in the morning. They came and went, leaving behind a hollow ache that I couldn't shake. I stopped, clutching at my chest, trying to catch my breath. "What do you want from me?" I whispered, my voice trembling, swallowed by the void. The mark flared, and the hum in the air shifted, rising in pitch. It wasn't random, it was a rhythm, deliberate and unrelenting, as if it were answering me. I straightened, my legs trembling, and forced myself to keep moving. The ground shifted beneath me, the soft surface giving way to something harder, smoother. It was stone now, or something like it, black and polished, stretching out in a jagged path that disappeared into the void. The pull in my chest guided me forward, and I followed, unable to resist the invisible force. As I walked, the air grew colder. Frost began to form on the surface of the stone, spreading in delicate, jagged patterns that mirrored the scars on the monolith. The hum grew louder, reverberating through the air and into my bones, and the mark on my chest pulsed in time with it, a constant, unrelenting beat. The path led me to another structure, smaller than the monolith, but no less alien. It was a pedestal, its surface smooth and featureless, glowing faintly with the same sickly light. Around it, the ground cracked and fractured, thin streams of light leaking upward like smoke. I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest. The whispers began again, faint and distant, their voices overlapping in chaotic, unintelligible fragments. They weren't words, they were thoughts, concepts, pushed into my mind with a force that left no room for resistance. The pedestal pulsed, its glow brightening, and the whispers sharpened into a single, unified voice. Step forward, complete the link. I didn't want to move. My body trembled, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps, but the pull in my chest was unrelenting. It dragged me forward step by agonizing step until I was standing before the pedestal. The surface began to shift, the smooth stone rippling like water. I reached out, my hand trembling, and pressed it against the pedestal. The world exploded. Light surged from the pedestal, engulfing me in a blinding, searing brilliance. The mark on my chest flared, its heat radiating through my body, burning away everything else. The whispers rose into a deafening roar, their voices merging into a chaotic symphony that filled my mind, drowning out every thought. I saw the chain again. It stretched endlessly, its glowing links pulsing with light, connecting worlds and dimensions far beyond anything I could comprehend. I saw other monoliths, other pedestals, other beings standing where I stood now, their faces blank, their bodies rigid as the light consumed them. Some were human, others were not, and I saw the void. It wasn't empty. It was alive, vast and infinite, its shifting, fractal patterns stretching beyond the limits of vision. It pulsed with the same rhythm as the chain, its movements deliberate, its presence overwhelming. It wasn't watching me, it was consuming me, pulling me deeper into its infinite expanse. The voice returned, louder than ever, reverberating through every part of me. The chain holds, the cycle continues. I screamed, but the sound was lost in the roar of the light, the whispers, the hum. My vision blurred, and the world dissolved into a swirling mass of light and shadow. The last thing I felt was the mark on my chest, pulsing one final time before everything went dark. When the light faded, I found myself inside a vast, cavernous space. The air was cold, sharp, and metallic, cutting into my lungs with every breath. The walls were impossibly tall, disappearing into shadow, their surfaces rippling with faint, shifting patterns. The marks weren't carved. They moved, like liquid metal poured into grooves that didn't fully exist. The pedestal was gone, its light extinguished, leaving behind a faint impression on the smooth ground. The whispers had quieted, retreating to the edges of hearing, their voices now a faint rhythmic murmur that blended with the low hum vibrating through the structure. I turned in place, trying to get my bearings. The space was endless, stretching out in all directions, but the pull in my chest remained, a faint, insistent tug that guided my steps. The mark burned faintly, its rhythm syncing with the hum in the walls. As I walked, the floor beneath me shifted. It wasn't stone or metal, but something in between. smooth yet pliant, giving slightly under my weight. Each step sent ripples across its surface, faint waves of light spreading outward, illuminating fragments of the space around me. Shapes emerged from the darkness as I moved. Tall, jagged forms, their edges fractured and uneven, like shards of glass caught mid-shatter. They loomed over me, their surfaces glistening with the same faint light that pulsed through the walls. At first, I thought they were statues, but as I drew closer, I realized they were moving, subtly, almost imperceptibly, shifting in place as though adjusting to my presence. The whispers grew louder and the pull in my chest intensified. The mark flared briefly and I doubled over, clutching at it as the pain spread through my body. My vision blurred, and for a moment, I saw something else. Fractured images of a world that wasn't mine. A towering spire silhouetted against a black sky. Figures standing in a circle, their faces obscured by shadow. A vast chain glowing and pulsing, its links stretching into infinity. The images faded as quickly as they came, leaving behind a hollow ache in my chest. I staggered forward, the ground rippling beneath me, the jagged shapes shifting closer as I moved. The chamber narrowed ahead, the rippling walls closing in, their patterns growing more frantic. The hum in the air deepened, vibrating through my bones, and the whispers coalesced into something resembling words. They weren't clear, but their intent was. They were driving me forward, pulling me deeper into the structure, towards something I couldn't understand. I reached another pedestal, smaller than the first, but identical in design. It sat in the center of a circular platform, its surface glowing faintly, the light casting long, distorted shadows across the walls. Around the platform, the ground was cracked and fractured, thin streams of light leaking upward like smoke. The mark on my chest flared again, and the whispers sharpened into a single voice. Touch it. Become. I didn't want to move. My hands trembled, my legs felt like lead, but the pull in my chest was too strong. It dragged me forward, step by agonizing step, until I was standing before the pedestal. The surface began to shift, rippling like water. My mark burned hotter, and I reached out, my fingers brushing against the smooth stone. The instant I made contact, the light surged, engulfing me in a searing brilliance. The vision came again, stronger this time. I saw the chain, its links stretching across dimensions, each one pulsing with light. I saw other beings, their forms twisting and fracturing as they stood at their own pedestals, their marks glowing brightly as they were consumed by the chain. They were like me, caught in something they didn't understand, their fate sealed long before they realized they were part of it. I saw the void. It wasn't empty, it was alive, a vast and infinite presence that pulsed with the same rhythm as the chain. Its edges stretched beyond comprehension, its surface shifting in fractal patterns that dissolved and reformed endlessly. It wasn't watching me, it was consuming me, pulling me deeper into its infinite expanse. The whispers in my mind grew louder, their voices merging into a single, deafening thought. The chain holds, the cycle continues. I felt myself unraveling, my thoughts and memories dissolving into the light. The mark on my chest flared brighter, its heat consuming me, and I screamed as the light swallowed everything. When I awoke, the pedestal was dark, its surface cold and lifeless. The chamber around me had changed, its walls now dull and cracked, the faint glow in their patterns gone. The whispers had faded, replaced by an oppressive silence that pressed against me like a weight. But the pull remained, stronger now, dragging me forward. I was part of the chain. The silence after the light faded was crushing, heavier than anything I'd experienced before. My chest heaved, the faint burn of the mark on my skin still pulsing with its relentless rhythm. The pedestal stood cold and inert behind me, its glow extinguished, the jagged cracks around it radiating outward like the spokes of a broken wheel. But the pull hadn't stopped. It was stronger now, a steady force dragging me forward, deeper into this impossible place. The whispers were gone, but their absence was worse. Without them, there was only the hum. A deep, resonant vibration that filled the air, the walls, the ground, and every corner of my mind. I moved forward, my legs trembling beneath me. The ground shifted underfoot, its surface no longer smooth, but uneven and fractured. Each step felt heavier, as though the void itself was pressing against me, trying to hold me in place. The mark on my chest flared again, urging me onward, pulling me toward a destination I couldn't see, but knew was there. The path narrowed as I walked, the walls closing in, their jagged patterns writhing like living veins. The air grew colder, biting at my skin, and the faint metallic tang I tasted earlier was stronger now, clinging to my tongue with every breath. The hum grew louder, its rhythm quickening, and I realized it wasn't just a sound, it was a heartbeat, a vast, unrelenting pulse that resonated through every part of this place, syncing with the mark on my chest. The chamber opened abruptly, revealing another monolith. This one was smaller than the first, its surface cracked and worn, the glowing veins running across it dim and uneven. It stood in the center of the space, surrounded by jagged spires that jutted from the ground like broken teeth. The spires pulsed faintly, their light flickering in time with the hum, and at their base lay another pedestal, identical to the first. The whispers returned, faint and distorted, their voices overlapping in chaotic harmony. They didn't form words, not yet, but their intent was clear. The pedestal waited, and so did the monolith. The pull in my chest was unbearable now, dragging me forward, forcing my legs to move even as my mind screamed to stop. I approached the pedestal, the spires towering over me, their flickering light casting long, jagged shadows across the chamber. The mark on my chest burned brighter, the heat radiating through my body, and the whispers grew louder, their chaotic symphony converging into a single, unyielding command. Place yourself. Complete the chain. I reached the pedestal and hesitated, my hands trembling as I stared at its surface. It was smooth, featureless, and cold, yet it pulsed faintly with the same rhythm as the mark on my chest. My mind rebelled, every instinct screaming at me to leave, to run, to fight against the pull that had brought me here. But it was futile. The mark flared, and my hands moved on their own, pressing against the pedestal. The hum in the chamber surged, the spires flaring with light, their veins glowing brighter as the whispers rose into a deafening roar. The monolith shifted. The cracks along its surface widened, spilling light into the chamber, and the spires trembled, their jagged edges fracturing further. The light from the monolith coiled upward, spiraling into the void above, its rhythm syncing with the hum, the whispers, the mark on my chest. And then the ground gave way. I fell into the light, weightless and formless, tumbling through an infinite expanse of fractured images and twisting patterns. The chain appeared before me again, stretching endlessly, its glowing links pulsing in time with the rhythm of the monolith. I saw the others again, countless beings across countless worlds, each one bound to their own link, their marks glowing brightly as the light consumed them. I was one of them now. I was the link. The void surged around me, vast and infinite, its fractal edges folding and unfolding, consuming everything. The whispers grew softer, fading into the hum, and the light from the chain coiled tighter around me, binding me to its rhythm. You are the link. The chain is unbroken. The voice was inside me now, filling the hollow spaces left behind as my memories dissolved, my thoughts unraveling into fragments. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the void, lost in the endless pulse of the chain. When I woke, the chamber was silent. The monolith was dark, its veins extinguished, and the pedestal beneath my hands was cold and lifeless. The spires had collapsed, their jagged edges scattered across the ground, and the light from the cracks had faded, leaving only faint scars on the surface. The pull remained, stronger than ever, guiding me forward. The chain would not stop. The air grew heavier as I moved forward, each step dragging me deeper into the void. The chamber behind me dissolved into darkness, swallowed by the endless expanse. The pull in my chest was stronger now, a relentless force driving me towards something vast and incomprehensible. The mark burned hotter with every step, its rhythm syncing with the vibrations in the ground, the air, and my very being. My thoughts felt scattered, fragmented. Images of the chain, the monoliths, and the void flickered through my mind, each one more disjointed than the last. I didn't know how long I walked. Time felt irrelevant here, reduced to a faint, meaningless concept. The ground beneath me shifted, its surface smooth and cold, like polished glass. The void above pulsed faintly, its fractal patterns rippling in and out of existence. Then I saw it. Far ahead, a massive structure loomed, its edges sharp and jagged, its surface alive with shifting veins of light. It wasn't a monolith, not like the ones I'd seen before. It was larger, impossibly so, stretching upward and outward until it disappeared into the void. The veins on its surface pulsed with an intensity that made my chest tighten, their rhythms syncing perfectly with the mark that burned beneath my skin. The gate. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This was the destination, the purpose, the reason for every step I'd taken. The chain led here, its glowing links converging on this vast, unknowable structure. The whispers returned, faint at first, then rising into a chaotic symphony that filled the air, their voices overlapping and clashing, driving me forward. The mark on my chest flared, and the gate responded. Its surface shifted, the veins of light coiling and twisting as the structure began to move. The air vibrated with a low, resonant hum, and the ground beneath me trembled, cracks spreading outward like the branches of a withered tree. The pull became unbearable, dragging me toward the gate, my legs moving on their own as the whispers merged into a single, deafening voice. The chain holds. The gate opens. The ground gave way beneath my feet, but I didn't fall. I was lifted, carried by the pull, the light from the gate enveloping me, blinding and searing. The mark burned brighter, its heat consuming me, and I felt myself unraveling, my body dissolving into the rhythm of the chain. The gate shifted again, its surface splitting apart, revealing a void within, a darkness so vast and deep it felt like staring into the end of everything. Shapes moved within it, incomprehensible forms that twisted and fractured, their edges blurring as they reached toward the light. The whispers returned, louder now, their voices merging with the hum, forming a chant that echoed through the void. The cycle continues, the chain is unbroken. The shapes within the gate surged forward, their movements slow and deliberate, their presence overwhelming. I couldn't look away, my vision locked on the impossible forms as they emerged, their edges coiling and writhing like smoke and fire. They weren't coming toward me, they were coming through me. The mark on my chest pulsed violently, its rhythm erratic and desperate, and I screamed as the light from the gate pierced through me, tearing away everything I was. My thoughts, my memories, my identity, all of it was consumed, dissolved into the rhythm of the chain. The shapes passed through the gate, their vast forms stretching beyond comprehension, their presence filling the void with an unbearable weight. The chain pulsed brighter, its links glowing with renewed intensity, and I realized in that final, agonizing moment what I had become. I wasn't the courier, I wasn't the link, I was the gate. The light from the chain surged one final time, and the void collapsed inward, swallowing everything. The void was still, its edges folding inward like a collapsing star. The light from the chain dimmed, its rhythm fading into the background as the presence passed through the gate. The shapes moved outward, vast and unknowable, their edges dissolving into fractal patterns that stretched endlessly into the dark. The hum that had filled the void grew quieter, its vibrations sinking into the walls of reality. The mark on my chest was gone, burned away along with everything else. I was no longer standing. I wasn't even sure I existed anymore. My thoughts had dissolved, leaving behind only a faint echo of awareness, a hollow presence drifting through the chain. And yet, the chain pulsed on. The links glowed faintly, stretching outward into infinity, their rhythms steady and unbroken. I could feel it now, a part of me that wasn't me, a thread woven into the fabric of the cycle, indistinguishable from the rest. The shapes that had passed through the gate receded into the distance, their presence growing fainter with every pulse. Somewhere in the vastness of the void, another link was forged, another presence was drawn into the rhythm, another gate prepared. The cycle continued, its purpose unyielding, its end unreachable. Rain hammered against the windows of the small depot, the fluorescent lights flickering weakly above the counter. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the vending machine in the corner, its motor struggling against the damp air. On the counter sat a package. Its brown paper wrapping was worn, its edges frayed, tied tightly with string that looked almost too intricate to have been done by human hands. A faint spiral was pressed into the paper, its lines uneven and shifting, catching the dim light as though it were alive. The door creaked open, letting in a gust of cold air and the smell of wet pavement. A delivery driver stepped inside, their boots squelching on the tile. They looked tired, dark circles under their eyes, a crumpled uniform, and a weariness in their step that spoke of too many late shifts and not enough rest. They stopped when they saw the package. "What the hell is this?" they muttered, their voice barely cutting through the low hum of the vending machine. There was no one to answer. The office was dark, the depot empty. The clipboard beside the package buzzed faintly, its screen glowing with a single set of coordinates. The driver stepped closer, their hand hovering over the package. The room felt colder now, the air thick with an unnatural stillness. They hesitated, glancing around as though expecting someone to explain. But the depot remained silent. Their fingers brushed against the package. It was warm. The clipboard buzzed again, a single word flashing beneath the coordinates. Urgent. The driver stared at the package, their face pale, their breath shallow. Somewhere deep inside something stirred, a faint pull, a rhythm that synced with the hum of the vending machine, the rain against the windows, the beating of their heart. The chain pulsed, unbroken. The rain fell in sheets, pooling in the ruts of an unpaved road that stretched into the darkness. The depot stood silent behind its rain-streaked windows, its fluorescent lights flickering intermittently. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the faint scent of cardboard and oil. On the counter sat a package, unremarkable to the casual eye. Rough brown paper, tied with string, its edges frayed as if it had been handled too many times. No labels, no sender, no indication of where it came from. Just the faint impression of a spiral pressed into the paper, a mark that seemed to twist and shimmer in the dim light. The door swung open, letting in a gust of damp air and the scent of rain-soaked pavement. A driver stepped inside, their boots squelching on the tile. They looked tired, dark circles beneath their eyes, uniform crumpled, a weariness in their gait that spoke of long hours and little rest. They stopped when they saw the package. "What's this?" they muttered, their voice barely cutting through the hum of the vending machine. There was no one to answer, no manager lingering in the office, no co-worker to shrug off the question. They stepped closer, their eyes narrowing as they read the clipboard resting beside it. Coordinates, not an address. The driver hesitated, their hand hovering over the package. The room felt colder now, the hum of the vending machine distant, muffled, as if the world itself were holding its breath. They touched the package. It was warm. The clipboard buzzed faintly, a single word flashing on the screen beneath the coordinates. Urgent,